everyone, Camilla here from Decodable Readers Australia. Today is video 4 of our new mini-series and it's all about grapheme introductions. This is where we map letters to the sounds that we have been explicitly taught. So today I'm going to give you 5 key considerations for introducing these graphemes. Key consideration number 1 is to ensure that you plan a systematic approach. Now, here at Decodable Readers Australia, we provide our community with a scope and sequence that starts at that simple level of common consonants and short vowels and moves up in complexity. So it's very important to plan out your scope and sequence and ensure you then break that scope and sequence down into sound sets. So for example, our first sound set is satpin, s, at, p, I, n. We then explicitly teach the graphemes, that's those letters that map those speech sounds. That brings us to key consideration number 2, explicitly teaching each grapheme. It's really important that when you're introducing these graphemes, you're not saying that S says S. When we come to things like the letter A, we don't say A says A, because that letter in particular, A, can actually make lots of different sounds. So for example, in the word was, it's making an O sound. In the word age, it's making an A sound. In the word water, it's making an OR sound. So the letter A doesn't say A. What we need to do is reverse that and go, well, we know the A sound, and this letter here, A, can represent that A sound. And that's what we do to begin with, to make sure that we're going from sound to print. And we know the sound A is being mapped by this letter, the letter A, and we can actually introduce that letter name as well. Now we need to do this for each letter, explicitly teaching each letter. Now how do you do that explicit teaching? Obviously the first part is talking about that mapping from sound to print. The next thing that I get the students to do is to produce that sound as they are directly looking at the letter. And then I put all the focus on the letter. I talk about the directionality, I talk about the letter itself and how it is made. Then I demonstrate on a big whiteboard how that letter is made. One of the best tools that you can have in your classroom are mini whiteboards. Now, if all of your students have their own little whiteboard, they can have the practice in front of you of producing that grapheme. When you have explicitly taught the directionality and then have your students copy that onto their mini whiteboard, you can give that instant feedback of directionality or how that grapheme is being produced, and you're able to see the whole class produce that at one time. Now, there is great research about the connection through the cognitive process of handwriting and mapping letters and sounds. So having your students copy those letters on mini whiteboards is a great tool and a great process to do in your classrooms. Key consideration number 3, don't forget about capital letters. Now, capital letters happen often in our books, the titles of our books, the start of sentences, the start of names, those proper nouns, and they are just as important. When a student sees a capital letter, they also need to know what sound it's mapped to. Just the same way as you've explicitly taught the lowercase letters, it's really important that we also teach those uppercases so we can actually see those letters mapped to the sounds as well. The next key consideration is daily practice, and it definitely needs to be daily. Students need that level of automaticity, so we need to practice each day to get them to that level. Now, they need to be able to see the grapheme and produce the phoneme that maps with that grapheme. So one of the best ways is through a daily drill, and it's simply holding up your grapheme cards and working through those cards, having those students produce the sounds that you have explicitly taught and are mapped. Now you can make sure that you have all of your sounds, so you're not only learning level 2, but you've got level 1 in there. And what I really do recommend is that you mix up the order each day. What we want our students to do is look at the letter and produce the sound. We don't want them to rote learn in any specific order. So mix up your cards of all the ones that you have explicitly taught and have a drill each day that will allow students to build that automaticity. Now, our next activity is called our reading racetrack, and this is from our Sounds of Reading toolkit. Our reading racetrack has spaces where you can place these phonics cards and have students jump from each card producing the sound and get faster and faster. What we actually want to do is to promote the speed of which they can map that phoneme and grapheme. So our reading racetrack is a great tool to build that automaticity. Another great activity is sound swap. Lay your phonics cards on the table and have students swat the matching grapheme when you call out a phoneme. You can even get a little bit trickier with this by calling out a word and have them isolate the beginning or middle or end sound and swat the letter that is representing that sound. Our next key consideration is all about word building, using that letter-sound correspondence knowledge, putting them together with other letters and sounds, and being able to decode whole words. And that's what next week's video is all about. I'm going to give you some key tips, especially for your vulnerable learners, of getting them to blend letters and sounds to decode words. So join me next week.